You know that moment when something clicks, like a switch flipping in your brain, and suddenly you can't unsee it? That happened to me on New Year's Eve, a night that was supposed to be full of good food, laughter, and old friends, but instead ended up as the beginning of the end. Emily and I were invited to this annual dinner party hosted by her friend Vanessa. We'd gone the past few years. Nothing fancy, just a group of late 20s and early 30s couples catching up, drinking overpriced wine, and pretending the new year would change everything. Emily loved it. She always picked out her outfit a week ahead of time, curled her hair just right, and floated around the room like she owned it. And I was happy to let her have that space. She thrived around people. This year, though, things already felt off. Started with her phone. The whole day she was glued to it, texting nonstop with that little private smile she thought I didn't notice. She said she was coordinating with Vanessa, that there were logistics to sort out. Okay, fine. But it wasn't just logistics. She wasn't acting rushed or stressed. She was amused, entertained. I remember watching her tap out a message and then grin to herself like she was holding in a secret. I asked, casually, something funny? She looked up like she forgot I was there. Oh, just Vanessa being ridiculous, she said. She's stressing over the wine pairings like this is a state dinner or something. She held my gaze a little too long after saying it, like daring me to challenge it. I didn't. That night, when we got to the party, everything looked normal. Familiar faces, warm lighting, some background jazz humming beneath the small talk. We handed off our coats and made the rounds, saying hi to people we hadn't seen in months. And then Lucas showed up. I'd heard the name before. He was a coworker from her office, recently promoted, according to Emily. I hadn't thought much of him. She mentioned him in that offhand way you mention a guy in meetings who cracks the occasional joke. But when he walked through the door that night, Emily turned into someone I didn't recognize. She lit up like a Christmas tree. Her whole body shifted toward him. Her posture straightened. Her voice went up an octave. It was like someone had thrown a spotlight on him and she was the only one clapping. "Nathan, this is Lucas," she said brightly, dragging him toward me by the sleeve of his jacket. "I told you about him. He's the one who made that joke about the coffee machine that day. Remember?" She was breathless, like this was some celebrity moment. I reached out to shake his hand. He was polite enough, flashing a confident smile and giving me that firm, calculated handshake. But he barely looked at me. His eyes bounced back to her like magnets, the kind of eye contact that ignores everyone else in the room. Over the course of the night, I watched it happen, the two of them orbiting each other. Inside jokes I'd never heard before. Him reaching over to brush something off her shoulder, a gesture that was just a second too long. Her hand on his arm when she laughed, even when the joke wasn't that funny. She'd lean in close when he talked, touch his chest lightly when she made a point, sip from her wine glass with that small, playful smirk that was usually reserved for me. I tried to brush it off at first, told myself it was nothing. Emily was affectionate with everyone. It was part of her charm. But there was a difference between friendly and familiar. And this was something else. At one point, she walked over with Lucas, mid-laugh, and said, "You should have heard what he said about the sales team's last pitch. It was brutal but honestly true. Tell him, Lucas." Lucas grinned, but it was the kind of grin that said I wasn't really part of the joke. He tossed me a summary, but his eyes were still on her, like I was just an obstacle to navigate around. I excused myself to grab a drink and stood by the kitchen window for a minute, trying to breathe. The night air snuck in through a crack and cooled my neck. I needed that, because something was rising in me. Not quite jealousy, not yet anger, but an ache, a gnawing gut feeling I couldn't swallow down. When she came to find me a few minutes later, I didn't say anything right away. I just handed her a fresh drink and watched her eyes. "You okay?" she asked. "You look like you're in your own world." I nodded. Then gently, because I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I asked, "Hey, so, what's the deal with you and Lucas?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. You just seem close." She stared at me for a second, then threw her head back and laughed. A little too loud for the moment. Too bright. and way too rehearsed. "Oh my God, Nathan," she said. "Are you seriously jealous right now?" I didn't answer. She stepped closer, still laughing, and swatted me playfully on the arm. "He's just a coworker. Chill." There it was. That word. Chill. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Dismissive. Like I was the one out of line for noticing what was right in front of me. Like I was being possessive for wanting to understand why my wife was practically glowing around another man. She made it sound like I was insecure, like I was the one making a scene. And maybe to everyone else in that room it looked like that. A husband pulling his wife aside to interrogate her for having a harmless conversation. But to me it wasn't harmless. It was a shift, pivot I hadn't seen before. And her laugh? It wasn't lighthearted. It was defensive. It was a mask. I stood there while she tossed back the rest of her drink and walked away to rejoin the group. Just like that. As if the question had never been asked. As if my discomfort was a fly she could just swat away. For the rest of the night, I didn't say anything. I smiled. I made small talk. I laughed at the right times and nodded when people told stories. But my eyes kept drifting to her across the room. How she stood just a little closer to Lucas than she needed to. How their knees touched when they sat on the couch. How he leaned in when he talked and she didn't lean back. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. I wasn't trying to be paranoid. But I knew my wife. I knew her rhythms, her tells, the way she interacted with people. And I also knew what it looked like when someone tried too hard to act like nothing was happening. That night, as we drove home in silence, she hummed along to the radio, like everything was fine. Like I hadn't just watched the woman I love turn into a stranger. She didn't ask what was wrong. And I didn't bring it up again. But I knew something had changed. A boundary had been crossed. And it wasn't about whether she had kissed him or texted him or even thought about cheating. It was the way she had responded to me when I asked. The way she deflected, laughed, made me feel like I was the one out of line. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about Lucas. This was about us. And even though I didn't say it out loud, I knew that something had quietly, invisibly cracked open. The kind of crack that doesn't show up all at once but eventually becomes impossible to ignore. That night was the first red flag. And her laughter was the first lie. After that New Year's night, I started noticing things I should have seen months ago. It's a weird feeling. Realizing you've been living in a fog, trusting someone so completely that you edited out the parts that didn't fit. That night was like someone wiped the glass clean, and suddenly, all the smudges I used to ignore were right there, staring me in the face. I didn't accuse her. I didn't bring it up again. But in the quiet moments, in the car, in the shower, lying in bed while she scrolled through her phone, my mind wouldn't stop. Little memories kept surfacing. Stuff I had brushed off at the time. Things that felt too small to matter until they weren't. Like the way she started staying late at work. First, it was once a week. Then twice. Then it was back-to-back meetings or last-minute deadlines, or some vague thing she couldn't quite explain. Sometimes she'd come home long after dinner, smelling like a bar, cheeks flushed, claiming her team went out for drinks. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But now every excuse felt like a script. A rehearsed line said just convincingly enough to skate by. And her phone. God, her phone. She used to leave it face up on the counter. Didn't matter if I saw a text come in or picked it up to check the time. But somewhere along the way it started living face down. Locked. Silent. She'd take it with her into the bathroom. She used to leave it on the nightstand, now it was under her pillow. She started jumping when it buzzed, guarding the screen like a secret. And whenever I asked something simple, "Who was that?" or "Everything okay?" she'd get sharp. "What, are you checking up on me now? Do you not trust me or something?" It always caught me off guard how quickly the walls went up. One minute we were eating takeout on the couch, watching some dumb reality show, and the next, she was accusing me of being controlling because I asked who was texting at 11 p.m. I told myself she was just stressed, that I was overthinking. I clung to the idea that if there was something wrong, she'd tell me. We'd always been that kind of couple. Honest, open, messy but communicative. But I was starting to see that wasn't true anymore. Maybe it hadn't been true for a while. I remember one night vividly. It was sometime in early December before the party. She came home late, almost midnight, and I was already in bed, half asleep. She slipped in beside me quietly, but the smell hit me instantly. Cologne. Not mine. I asked. Groggy. New perfume. She hesitated. Just long enough for me to wake up fully. Oh no, she said. One of the guys at work hugged me goodbye. He wears like way too much cologne. It stuck. She said it like it was nothing. Rolled over and kissed my cheek. But even in the dark, I felt her tense up when she said it. The next day I smelled our bedsheets before I made the bed. That scent, sharp, musky, expensive, wasn't mine. And it wasn't from some brief hug either. It clung to the pillow, the sheets, her hair. Still, I said nothing. Then there was the weekend she disappeared. She said she needed space, that she was overwhelmed and wanted to clear her head. Just a solo trip, she told me. I booked a little Airbnb by the lake. No cell service. I'll be off the grid for a few days. She kissed me goodbye like she meant it. I helped her load her duffel into the car. I even told her to enjoy it. And I believed her. That's what haunts me the most. Because now, looking back, that trip didn't make sense. She came home a day later than she said she would. No explanation. Just lost track of time and a weak apology. She was quieter when she got back. More distant. She spent the entire night on her phone, texting with Vanessa, her go-to name when she didn't want me asking questions. And then came the makeup. Emily had always cared about how she looked. She had her own rhythm, her own style. But this was different. She went from casually pretty to camera ready, even on days when we had nowhere to go. New clothes, new skincare routines, new lingerie that I hadn't seen her wear, not for me at least. She started waking up early to get ready for the day. Even if she was just working from home, she'd spend an hour doing her makeup, spritz perfume I didn't recognize, and then sit at her desk with her camera mysteriously turned off for Zoom meetings. When I asked about the perfume, she said, "Just trying something new. You don't like it?" It wasn't about liking it. It was the why. Why wear it on days you don't leave the house? Why wear it at all when I'm not around? I didn't push. I just nodded. Smells nice, I said, but the question stayed. Another time, she snapped at me for asking if she wanted to come with me to my nephew's birthday party. A simple family gathering, nothing dramatic. I just thought it would be nice. Do I have to? She said, not even looking up from her phone. No, I said slowly, but I thought you liked seeing my sister. I'm tired, Nathan. I don't have the energy to make small talk and pretend everything's fine. Pretend what's fine? She just stared at me, then shook her head and walked off. That phrase stuck with me. Pretend everything's fine. Like she had already checked out, and I hadn't noticed. Like she was playing a role and I was too blind to see it. I'd wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and she'd be sitting on the couch in the dark, phone glowing in her hands. She'd quickly lock it when I came out of the bedroom. Couldn't sleep, she'd say. Didn't want to wake you. Sometimes she was crying. Sometimes she was just staring. Every time I offered comfort, she pulled away. I stopped asking. She started spending more nights out. Drinks with coworkers. Dinners that ran long. Happy hours that turned into after-parties. At first, she'd send pictures, smiling selfies with other women, group sh*ts at bars. But then even that stopped. And when I asked how the night went, she'd get vague. It was fine. Or just work stuff, you wouldn't be interested. She didn't talk to me about her day anymore. She used to come home full of stories. Annoying clients, weird coworkers, funny moments from meetings. Now it was just silence or worse, clipped answers. Nothing happened. Same old, same old. Just tired. But I didn't feel like I was living with someone who was just tired. I felt like I was living with someone who was hiding. Even the way she touched me changed. Her kisses got shorter. Her hugs turned into half-hearted squeezes. She stopped reaching for my hand on walks. Stopped resting her head on my shoulder when we watched movies. S**X became rare, then non-existent. And when it did happen, it felt distant. Like she wasn't really there. like she was somewhere else in her head, going through the motions. I once asked, "Are we okay?" She looked at me, startled, then frowned. "Why wouldn't we be?" "I don't know," I said. "You just feel far away." She shrugged. "I'm just stressed. Work's been crazy." That was always the excuse. Work, stress, life, but never us, never her. There's a kind of pain that creeps in slowly, not the kind that breaks you all at once, but the kind that seeps into the cracks and makes you question everything. I'd lie awake at night wondering when it had started, if there was something I had done, if I had missed the signs for too long. And the worst part? I still loved her. Even as I replayed the moments in my head, the nights she came home late, the scent of cologne that didn't belong, the sudden privacy, the coldness. I still wanted to believe there was an explanation, a version of the story where I wasn't being lied to. But deep down, I knew she was already gone. Not physically, but emotionally. She had walked out months ago. She just didn't tell me. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from an argument or a single cruel word. It comes from confirmation. From realizing that the voice you've been trying to silence was right all along. I think part of me was hoping I'd never find proof. As backwards as that sounds, not knowing gave me something to hold on to. A loophole in the narrative. A reason to keep pretending. But life doesn't let you stay in limbo forever. Eventually, the truth kicks the door down, and mine came crashing in 2 weeks after that New Year's dinner party. It started with a mistake. Hers. Emily had left her laptop open in the kitchen. She was upstairs on a call, and I wasn't even planning to snoop. I swear. I was making coffee, pacing, trying to get through another long Monday morning without spiraling. Then I noticed an email notification flash on her screen. Subject line, "Can't wait to see you tonight." I froze. It wasn't from a brand. Not from a store or an airline or a friend planning a girls' night. It was from someone named Lucas. Yeah, that Lucas. I stared at it, half expecting it to disappear, half hoping I imagined it. But it stayed there, glowing in the top right corner of the screen like a siren. I glanced toward the stairs, still on her call. I know what you're thinking, that this was the moment I crossed a line. And maybe it was. But when the person you love has spent months rewriting reality, when you feel like a guest in your own relationship, you do what you have to do to survive the gaslighting. I clicked the email, and just like that, the dam broke. It wasn't a long message, just a few lines. "Hey beautiful, can't wait to see you tonight. I booked the room at the usual place, same time. Don't stress about anything. I just want you. L." I didn't breathe. I read it again, slower this time, like that might change the meaning. But it didn't. Usual place. Same time. I just want you. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't just a friend or a work buddy, or someone from the office. It was a man who knew her int asterisk mately, knew her schedule, knew how to talk to her in a way I hadn't heard in months. I sat down hard, like my legs stopped working. After that, everything snowballed. I knew her password. She hadn't changed it. I opened her email fully, and what I found wasn't a single thread of infidelity. It was a web. Dozens of messages. Some short, some long, some emails laced with flirtation, private jokes about coworkers, little complaints about how tense things feel at home, plans to meet for drinks that I had thought were innocent. Others were straight up romantic. One was just a photo, a selfie of Emily in a black dress I'd never seen, taken in a hotel bathroom mirror. The caption, "Think you'll like this one tonight." He replied with a heart emoji, and a line I'll never forget. "You don't know what you do to me." I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were trembling. I couldn't feel my feet. I just sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the faint sound of her voice upstairs as she talked through some work call like everything was normal. Like she wasn't tearing my life in half. It wasn't just the affair that broke me. It was the planning. The way they talked about me, not cruelly but dismissively. Like I was a roommate, a background character, problem to work around. They had this whole language, code names, vague references. And yet it was all right there, hiding in plain sight. There were receipts too. Hotel bookings, ride-share confirmations, a dinner reservation on our anniversary, the night she claimed she was sick and wanted to stay home. I'd brought her soup, rubbed her back while she faked a migraine. She left 20 minutes after I fell asleep, and met him in a hotel suite downtown. That was the night something in me died. I just didn't know it yet. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't rage or cry or pack a bag. Instead, I made copies. Every email, every receipt, every photo. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, maybe nothing. But I needed them. Proof. Validation. Something to hold onto when she inevitably tried to spin it. And she would try. That night, I sat across from her at the dinner table just like always. She asked me about my day. I mumbled something about work. She told me she might be going to a team-building retreat next weekend. I nodded, my mouth full of lies. I could barely look at her. The woman I loved. The one I imagined growing old with. The person I defended through every rough patch, every hard year. The one who had somehow turned our life into a rehearsal for her escape plan. That night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. Every hour felt like a wave crashing into me. Every breath was a reminder. She chose this, and she didn't even tell you. The next day, I made a call to a friend, someone who'd been through a messy breakup and knew a good attorney. I wasn't ready to file for divorce. Not yet, but I needed information. I needed to understand what my rights were, financially, emotionally, legally. Because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't someone making one bad choice in a moment of weakness. It was a pattern, a calculated betrayal. That weekend, Emily said she was going out of town. The team retreat, she reminded me with a smile. No phones allowed. It's kind of a digital detox thing. I kissed her goodbye and watched her drive off to meet him. The part that really gutted me? She looked happy, free, like she was walking toward her real life, and I was just the layover she never mentioned again. I don't remember much about that weekend. I barely ate, barely slept. I sat on the back porch for hours at a time, reading the emails over and over again, trying to find some clue, some hint that she had wrestled with it, that she had felt guilt, conflict, anything. But she hadn't. She wasn't undecided. She had already left me in her heart. Her body just hadn't followed yet. And then came the final blow. Buried deep in one of the older threads, from before the holidays, was a message that stopped my breath. I know I need to tell him soon. He deserves that much. But I want things to be right before I go. Go. That word. Like our home, our marriage, our life, was just something she could step out of like an old coat. That's when it hit me. She wasn't going to confess. She was going to disappear. Quietly. Painlessly. To her, at least. She had a plan. She had him. And I was just the last chapter in a story she'd already finished writing. 2 years had passed since Emily walked out of my life, though at this point, it felt like she had disappeared long before that. Some people say time heals. I don't fully agree. Time doesn't heal. It just gives the pain enough space to stretch out until it becomes part of the landscape. It turns something sharp into something dull. But it's still there. Always. By then, I'd rebuilt most of my life. Moved apartments. Changed jobs. Saw a therapist for a while. It took a long time to even begin trusting people again. There were mornings I still half expected her to text me, even though I hadn't heard a word from her since the divorce was finalized. No goodbye. No closure. Just silence, like she had been erased from the story, or worse, like I had. Friends told me it was for the best. That she didn't deserve to have a voice in my life anymore. That disappearing was her final act of control. But deep down, I think I still wanted to understand. Even if it wouldn't fix anything. Even if I knew it would hurt. So when I ran into her, by complete accident, I wasn't ready. It happened in a city I didn't even live in. I was visiting a client for work, in a place I hadn't been in years. It was supposed to be a quick in-and-out meeting. Grab a coffee, shake a few hands, fly home. I'd finished early and wandered into a shopping center to K*LL time before my ride. It was a typical weekday afternoon. People shopping, kids running around. music playing quietly through overhead speakers. I didn't see her at first. It was the sound of a child laughing that caught my attention. A little girl, maybe 2, maybe 3, chasing a balloon across the polished tile floor. And then I heard a voice. Soft, familiar. Careful, sweetheart. Don't let it fly away. I turned my head, and there she was, Emily, standing by a children's clothing store, dressed casually in jeans and a loose sweater, holding a shopping bag in one hand and a sippy cup in the other. Her hair was shorter. She looked older. Not in a bad way, just more settled. First, she didn't see me. She was focused on the little girl, her little girl, picking up the balloon and walking it back like a proud explorer. And just like that, everything else faded. The noise, the people, the moment. It was like I was watching a scene from someone else's life. Because that's what it was. A life that used to be mine. A woman who used to be my wife. Now completely out of reach, surrounded by a world I was never invited into. Eventually, she looked up. We locked eyes. And for a moment, just a second, I thought she might come over. I braced for it. The apology. The awkward hello. The how have you been? But it never came. She just stared, blinking, processing. Then she looked down at the girl, who was tugging at her sweater, and gave her a small smile. She turned away, and walked into the store without a word. No wave, no acknowledgement, nothing, just walked away. I stood there frozen, hands clenched at my sides, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch the door close behind her. That was it. That was the moment I realized what had actually happened to me. I hadn't just lost a marriage. I'd been erased. I wasn't a scar. I wasn't even a memory. I was nothing. A chapter torn out of the book so the new story could begin cleanly. She hadn't looked at me with guilt or regret. She looked at me like a stranger, like someone she vaguely recognized from a dream that didn't mean anything anymore. I don't remember how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds. Could have been 10 minutes. Eventually, I left. I don't know how I got back to the hotel. I don't remember the ride to the airport or the flight home. The whole day dissolved into a haze. But the image stayed. Her. And the child. I didn't know anything about her life now, where she lived, what she did, whether Lucas was still around. We had no mutual friends anymore. She'd blocked me on everything not long after the papers were signed. It was like she'd built a wall, brick by brick, and made sure there were no windows. And yet, there it was. Proof that her life had continued. That it had blossomed. That while I was busy stitching myself back together, she had moved on and started fresh. With a family, a home, maybe even the love she was searching for when she walked away from me. And it gutted me, not because I wanted her back, but because I had been replaced. Not in a romantic sense. I didn't care about Lucas. I didn't miss her, not really. I missed who she used to be, who we used to be. But that person was long gone. What crushed me was the finality of it. The realization that there was a version of her that existed now who didn't carry any part of me with her. No mention. No shadow. Nothing. I had been scrubbed from her story like an editing error. And seeing her with that child, a child that could have been mine, that could have been ours, just twisted the knife in a way I wasn't prepared for. I spent the next few weeks in a kind of emotional shutdown. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not even my closest friends. I just kept going through the motions, showing up to work, smiling at meetings, answering texts like I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was furious, not just at her, at myself, for letting it hurt, for still caring, for giving someone that much power over me even now. It was hard to admit how much seeing her had affected me. I'd spent so long trying to convince myself I was better off, that I didn't need closure, that I didn't want answers. But that day in the mall, it shattered that illusion. I did want answers. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to ask, how could you do this? Not just the cheating, not just the lies, but the after, the complete erasure. The fact that she rebuilt everything and never once looked back. That kind of indifference is colder than any hate. And in that moment, I realized something else. She hadn't just walked out on our marriage. She had made peace with it a long time before I ever saw it coming. which meant, in her mind, I had no right to feel abandoned. She had already said goodbye. She just hadn't bothered to tell me. It had been months since I saw her at the mall. Emily with the child. I didn't try to reach out. I didn't stalk her social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates. I didn't need to. That brief, silent encounter had told me everything I thought I needed to know. She had moved on, started over, and I wasn't even a footnote. But pain has layers. Just when you think you've reached the bottom, another level cracks open beneath your feet. I thought the worst was behind me. I thought I had made peace with what happened. Then I found out the truth, and it nearly destroyed me. It started with an unexpected message. Not from Emily, not from Lucas, from someone I hadn't heard from in years, an old coworker of Emily's named Dana. We'd only ever spoken in passing. She'd been to our house a couple of times for game nights back when everything still felt normal. She was kind, soft-spoken, never one to get involved in drama, which made her message all the more surreal. Popped up in my inbox out of nowhere. Hey Nathan, I hope this isn't inappropriate. I've been sitting on this for a long time, and I wasn't sure if I should say anything. But I saw you recently. I think we were at the same cafe a few days ago, and something about how tired you looked just stayed with me. I don't know if this will help or hurt, but I think you deserve to know the truth, especially about the child. I must have read that sentence a dozen times before the weight of it hit me. The child. I responded cautiously. What do you mean? Dana replied almost immediately. She was pregnant when she left. I don't know if you ever found that out. She told the office she had separated from you a few months earlier, long before she actually moved out. She never said who the father was, but everyone assumed it was Lucas. Even Lucas did, I think, but she wasn't sure. That's why she left so suddenly. She didn't want either of you to know she was unsure. The words hit like a punch to the ribs. Pregnant? I didn't even know how to process it. My mind went blank and then loud all at once. Flashes of memories came flooding back. Late nights, her mood swings, her sudden disappearing acts. How pale she'd looked some mornings. How quickly she shut me down when I asked if she was okay. How she'd needed space. She wasn't just leaving a marriage. She was hiding a pregnancy. And maybe not just hiding it, maybe hiding me from it. I felt sick. I called Dana. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just needed to hear her voice, to hear if she was sure. She answered after a few rings, and before I could even speak, she said softly, I wouldn't have said anything if I wasn't certain. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. There was a pause on the other end. Because you deserve to know, she said. Because Emily never gave you a choice. I thanked her, though the words felt hollow. Hung up. Sat in my living room for hours just staring at nothing. My hands were shaking. A child. My child? I didn't know what to believe. All I knew was that I had been shut out of something fundamental. Something irreversible. And that kind of grief, the kind tied to what-ifs, it doesn't stab. It suffocates. There's no screaming. No breaking things. Just silence. Long, heavy silence. The next few days were a blur. I didn't tell anyone. Couldn't. How do you explain to someone that your ex-wife might have had your child, and just never told you? That she left you not just as a partner, but as a parent? That she let another man raise what could have been your son or daughter? I kept thinking back to the girl in the mall. Her face, her laugh, her tiny fingers wrapped around that balloon string. She looked like Emily. But now I was wondering, did she look like me? I couldn't shake the thought. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't function. Eventually, I did the only thing I could. I reached out. Not to Emily. Not yet. I contacted a lawyer. I told them everything. The infidelity, the sudden divorce, the child I'd never been told about. They were cautious but kind. We can't accuse her of anything without evidence, they said. But if you believe there's a possibility you're the biological father, and you want answers, there are legal avenues we can pursue. I nodded numbly, unsure what I was signing up for. I didn't even know if I was ready to be a parent, or if I even had the right to ask. But I had to ask. Because not asking meant accepting that part of my life had been stolen from me. In silence, with no confrontation, no goodbye, no truth. I spent the next few weeks gathering what little information I could. Dana helped discreetly. She confirmed that the child's birth had been kept relatively quiet. No public announcements. No social media posts beyond vague lifestyle updates. Lucas had moved in with Emily a few months after she left me. To everyone else, it looked like a clean, simple story. New relationship, new baby, new life. But I knew now it was built on a lie. I finally sent a message to Emily. It was short, direct. We need to talk. I know about the child. She didn't reply right away. I waited an entire day, pacing, sweating, questioning everything. Then finally, a message came through. Nathan, please don't do this. Let's not reopen everything. It's been 2 years. That was it. No denial. No confusion. Just avoidance. I replied, is she mine? Again, nothing for a full day. Then, I don't know. Those 3 words knocked the wind out of me. I don't know. You don't not know unless there's doubt. You don't carry a child into the world and stay silent unless you're hiding something you don't want found out. And she hadn't just hidden it from me. She'd hidden me from her. Her daughter. Our daughter? The next few weeks became a legal chess game. I won't get into the details, but eventually, after a series of tense negotiations and mediation sessions, Emily reluctantly agreed to a DNA test. Her tone throughout was cold, defiant, but I saw it in her eyes, the fear. She knew what the result might be, and deep down I think she knew what she had done. The test took weeks to process. Weeks of me barely sleeping, barely working, haunted by a future that might have been mine. A child out there in the world who had never known I existed. And then the results came. Positive. Probability of paternity. 99. 98%. She was mine. She had been mine the whole time. I sat in the lawyer's office with the paperwork in front of me, my hands shaking, my heart in my throat. I was a father, and no one had told me. The DNA test confirmed what I already suspected. The child was mine. Seeing it in writing still hit like a freight train. I wasn't just a name Emily had left behind. I was a father, and they had decided I didn't deserve to know. She and Lucas had built a life around my daughter while I grieved a ghost I never even knew existed. This wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A choice to erase me from something that could have changed my life and hers. And when I realized how deliberate it all was, the silence, the secrecy, the complete control of the narrative, that's when grief turned to resolve. I had every right to know my child, and I was done letting anyone take that from me. The marriage ended the night she laughed off my suspicions. But my story didn't stop there. I started connecting with my daughter carefully, respectfully, building something from the wreckage. Not for revenge. Not to punish. Just to show up. I couldn't rewrite the past. But I could be here now. That was my power. Not forgiveness, not bitterness. Just the quiet choice to still be the man I always was, even when others tried to write me out.